Wow, just wow, we've been waiting forever for this chapter and it's finally here, so make sure to stay tuned for this monumental and historic chapter. But first, channel Parking Within and smash that like button with no mercy. Make this the video you joined the Nakama if you haven't by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss future One Piece reviews and updates. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So this chapter is called Shamrock Appears, and for now all I can say is it's gonna be Sham Wow. That's right. In the cover story, we don't see who's who in his base yet, but we see some of his unnamed followers. Honestly, the cover story interest is picking up for me right about now, but the real hype is in the main story, of course, and that starts with Luffy and his group arriving at Aurust Castle in the Western Village. Road explains that this castle is not in use after King Harold's death, so he's surprised to see that the front door is damaged and that the guards are gone. Zoro, for his part, noticed that the door was broken from the inside. I think we all know what the cause was. They crossed the front door and arrived to a destroyed courtyard. Road says that those are the marks of the fierce battle that took place in the castle when Loki killed Harold. So much mystery surrounding that event. Can't wait to learn more about it. The only problem is that Loki is not the type to spill the tea, but we do learn some interesting stuff in this chapter. Zoro comments that the forces that left these must have been fearsome, and Road responds that, as you all know, Loki is a monster, but King Harold was also a man known as the Great Warrior. The fate of the castle was sealed the moment the battle broke out. So although we don't know exactly what happened here, it seems even if we are to believe the stories, we got a fair fight between the two giants. And if the fighting between Dory and Bragi is anything to go off of, I don't see why Loki would be blamed for killing a giant in a fair fight, just like Dory and Bragi were and eventually are planning to do with each other. That is, if Loki did even actually kill King Harold. Luffy comments, "Whoa, it's huge." Nami, for her part, says, "Huh? What is it? It's scary." So Luffy and his group enter into the castle and we can see that it is badly damaged. There are many skeletons on the floor. They apparently belong to the more than 100 giant warriors slain on that day by Loki. We're told that Mountain Beard, Ja Rule, and Loki were the only two survivors, which is big information. Loki is likable in part precisely because he's okay with you thinking he's a villain, he plays into it, and he's not one to defend himself. Meanwhile, the only other guy that was there seemed to defend Loki last chapter. Remember, he said even Loki and the late Harold, in a sense, are the result of attempting to be Nika, perhaps. And everyone got mad at him, saying you don't have to rationalize Loki's actions that way, Chief. Very strange goings on indeed. Let me know if anyone else sees the inconsistencies here between how Loki is demonized for apparently fighting many giants, including King Harold, while Dory and Bragi are respectable for fighting each other to the death. Anyways, Luffy sees a skull with horns similar to that of Oars. Road explains something very interesting here, saying that some giants inherited some blood of the ancient giant tribe. However, there are no longer pure blood members of the ancient tribe. They find a picture of King Harold in a portrait hanging on a wall. He was bald and fierce looking with a huge black mustache and beard. He also had two huge scars on his head and a line tattoo on his face similar to Ripley's. Road lets us know that that is in fact the portrait of King Harold. And despite looking fierce, Road says that he was a man who loved peace and sought to connect Elbaf with nations of the world. He was said to be the quote-unquote greatest king Elbaf has ever seen. Again, I very much look forward to how the Accursed Prince versus the Greatest King images shift as this arc progresses, because I'm sure they will. Perhaps the connection to other nations is a clue that he might have been cozying up to the world government, something Loki would obviously be against based on recent chapters, but we'll have to wait and see. Luffy hears about this peaceful king and immediately thinks he looks strong, which is funny and shows what Luffy cares about. Road adds that the marks on his head are what remained after he pulled out his own horns. Another juicy bit of information. Loki does have horns coming from his helmet, and this suggests they are real. However, Road says that Harold pulled his own out because it was a sign of the ancient giant tribe, which would remind people of the warring periods. Now that sounds super weird and self-loathing if you ask me. It's like turning your back on your ancestors and yourself. Again, I might be feeling some they, meaning perhaps the world government or celestial dragons, are better than us vibes from the king, and so he metaphorically rejected his giant origins instead of being proud. Not surprising, he clashed with Loki, who clearly kept his horns, made a point of keeping them intact since one has a bandage on it if you pay close attention. And while Harold is constantly spoken of in terms of peace, we all know Loki is always talking about destruction. Luffy, surprised, asks he had horns, and Zoro comments that's some resolve, referring to how he pulled out his own horns. Let me know how you're feeling about King Harold in the comments, but I think something is rotten in the state of Denmark, if you know what I mean. Road goes on to explain that Hyruden is Loki's half-brother. Hyruden was born between Harold and another giant woman before Harold married Loki's mom, so Hyruden is the big bro. So Harold didn't stick with the same woman he impregnated, but we're told it's because Hyruden's mother couldn't become queen because she was a giant from another country and was looked down upon, since many in Elbaf like to preserve a pure Elbaf bloodline. Another weird piece of information, and definitely doesn't sound like the giants we've met so far at least. I find it hard to believe that Harold couldn't do what he wanted as king, especially since most kings historically married women from different countries to create alliances. And keep in mind, this is the same king who changed the ways of the entire country from being warlike to supposedly peaceful, so it's all very fishy. Zoro, of course, is the one to ask why Road chose to be on the ship of a half-blood like Hyruden. We see a small flashback of when Road was bullied as a child because he was an otaku. They really brought otakus being bullied into the land of Elbaf. Hyruden, though, was impressed with Road because he was good at drawing roads, aka he was impressed by his map drawing skills and asked to be his friend. So they were pretty much both outsiders and probably bonded over that fact. We're told that Hyruden in this flashback looks similar to when we saw him in Big Mom's flashback. Road says that Hyruden withstood all the insults and humiliation he received as a half-blood. Hyruden's dream is to become the king of all giants, not just Elbaf, and to unite all of the giant tribes of the world. Okay, so that is epic, and it's what Harold should have done instead of just impregnating and dipping. I think Hyruden will do it too, since he's the older brother, while, like I said, I think Loki is less cut out to be king and will join the Straw Hats instead. And it was nice to see that a lot of you agreed with me about that in the comments of the last review. A lot of us are hoping for it, and hopefully Oda makes it happen. Meanwhile, as they speak, Luffy notices the guards lying on the floor and says, hey, there's someone lying there. But before we see the bodies, we cut to the underworld where the real juicy stuff is about to take place. We see Loki's face covered in blood because Gunko is attacking him with her powers. Man, I can't wait for Gunko to get her just desserts. She's been so annoying, and here she's just laying into a tied up person. Totally not cool. She enlarges her boots with arrows to make herself taller so that way she can attack Loki's face easily. She says, perhaps you understand now, but respect to Loki, he's a man of principles, ironically, compared to how most people view him, and won't join them no matter how much they attack him. He just says, like I said, I can't move a muscle right now. The Shanks-like figure says it won't change anything even if you could, implying that he could take out Loki if he were free and able to use his full power, even if Gunko couldn't. And honestly, after what we are about to learn, I think he's telling the truth. Loki will definitely need some Straw Hat assistance with this caliber of opponent. Gunko continues saying, low-class being, a chance for you to be risen to godhood. Such an honor is originally something out of your reach, even if you yearn for it, and here we are offering it to you. In other words, Loki is not like Doflamingo. He doesn't idealize being a celestial dragon. In fact, he pretty much views it as making a deal with the devil and compromising his principles. He'd rather he and his friends die than give in. Compared to the direct contrast of what Zoro was saying last chapter, that they probably shouldn't just trust a guy who's hated by his entire country, and compare that with what we're seeing now, this guy may be the most principled man in Elbaf, ironically. Gunko then creates some arrows that come out from her feet. The arrows mark the trajectory that Gunko's attacks will follow. This kind of reminds me of the arrow demon from Demon Slayer. Loki says, damn it, again? You will kick the right side of my face with an accelerated kick, and when my head is turned to the side from the impact, you will deliver an uppercut with that fist. Thanks for the heads up. Gunko responds, those arrows are the determined course of my future. In other words, the declaration of violence that cannot be avoided. However, it's possible to stop them. I ask you once more, Loki, will you join the God's Knights? So they're pretty much torturing Loki so that he'd take a very privileged but immoral position in the world of One Piece, and Loki won't budge. I love him more every chapter. He responds, no way I would, you fool. And now back to the note of Loki joining the Straw Hats. Wasn't there another principled Straw Hat that Luffy met while he was tied up? The OGs can put who that was in the comments, but for now we're moving on. We get an amazing double page where Gunko starts walking on top of the arrows she created. When Loki rejects them again, she attacks him just like Loki predicted, an accelerated kick to the right side of his face, and then a powerful uppercut. To attack Loki's giant body, Gunko creates huge boots and gauntlets with her arrows. Loki, being a true legend, loses consciousness before he gives in due to Gunko's attacks. We also see that other animals fell to her arrows while they were trying to defend Loki. A huge bummer, but again goes to show how Loki is probably a way better person than most people think. After all, if he was just ruling these animals through fear, they wouldn't put themselves in this situation. In an epic double page, we finally get what we've been waiting for so long. The hooded Shanks-like figure takes off his hood. He's no longer hooded, and we finally see his full appearance and discover his true identity. And yes, those of us who said it wasn't actually Shanks were right, and those holding on to the Shanks is evil or has a split personality theory were wrong. He is introduced as leader of God's Knights, world noble Figureland Shamrock, son of Saint Garling, one of the 5 elders. Shamrock says, change of plans, contact Marijoa. Everyone is utterly useless. I hope for this to go in a more clever direction. Gunko says, indeed, and I don't think death would change anything. Does this have to do with their faith? Gunko is also introduced as a God's Knight and specifically as an arrow human, aka a user of the Arrow no Mi. Figureland Shamrock looks exactly like Shanks, so evil Shanks twin yes, evil Shanks no, and I'm glad I called it from the get-go. I just trusted Shanks and it paid off. Of course, we finally see the side of Shamrock's face that Oda kept teasing us about, and there are no scars, and what's more, he has 2 arms because of course he didn't lose one saving Luffy. Shamrock wears a classic military uniform similar to those of British and French soldiers in the 17th century, we're told, with high boots and a scarf around his neck. And no surprise, he carries a sword on his waist. Luffy and Loki have quite the enemy cut out for them now, but I wonder if Zoro will be itching to get in on the action because of the sword and all. Either way, Shamrock looks at the unconscious Loki for now and says, the ferocious warriors of Elbaf who once conquered the New World in ancient times, we, the world government, will bring them under our command at all costs. So again, did Herald want to get this promotion to Celestial Dragon and work with them, and is that why Loki and him clashed? Definitely something to think about and something I'm curious about. But if you did enjoy this video, this chapter review, then you won't want to miss this video on screen right now that YouTube says you'll like and subscribe for more One Piece, and I'll see you in the next one.